Resuming debate, reprise de débat. The honourable member for Glengarry Prescott Russell.
Madame la Présidente, je suis fier de...
Madam Speaker, I'm proud to rise in the House this morning to talk about the motion brought forward by my colleague, the member for Humble River Black Creek. This motion seeks to shed light on this terrible disease, ALS. Every one of us in this House has witnessed what this disease can do to human beings because we saw what happened to our honourable colleague, Maurice Bélanger. I will always remember the meetings that we had during the campaign at Maurice's house on Monday nights at 9 p.m. Maurice would always take the time to feed us because he knew that we had had long days knocking on doors. For those who knew him, Maurice always said exactly what he thought. At the beginning of these meetings, Maurice would be the way he always was. He would express himself strongly, although at the end he spoke less. His voice was not as strong as it had been before. I thought, well, you know, a long campaign has an effect on people, even seasoned veterans. Later, I saw him at an event, and he'd completely lost his voice. I thought, well, he must be losing his voice because he was speaking so loudly every day during the campaign. But this was just my way of rationalizing the situation and thinking that Maurice didn't have a serious disease. But we know what happened. I witnessed what ALS can do to people.
Maurice had the courage to share his journey with all of us in this chamber. I did not know much about this disease, except that Professor Stephen Hawking was diagnosed with ALS and somehow managed to survive. Sadly, this was the only exposure to ALS I've had much of my life. And then a few years back, the Ice Bucket Challenge happened. We participated, gave money, and then the ALS issue faded. Madam Speaker, we have an all-party ALS caucus, which I proudly chair. I was interested in this issue because I witnessed what happened to our friend and thought I needed to make a difference. I was even more determined when ALS Society of Canada informed me that their community is always 3,000 individuals diagnosed with ALS. Nearly 1,000 die each year in Canada. This fact makes it hard for ALS Society of Canada to raise funds and cultivate champions within their community, as they will most likely die of the disease within 2 to 5 years. Unlike cancer, there are no survivors. And speaking of champions, I want to acknowledge Mrs. Carol Skinner, who was at our first ALS meeting. I want to thank her for sharing her story with us and for not giving up. I also want to acknowledge her husband and the 2,999 other families out there who are supporting their loved ones, because we know that 80% of the burden of care is shouldered by a family member. The cost on families can range from $150,000 to $250,000, and that's not counting the loss of revenues should the diagnosis result in a loss of employment. We also know that 80% of those diagnosed with ALS will die within 2 to 5 years. I now know that Stephen Hawking is part of the lucky 10% who get to survive 10 years or longer. We also know that only 10% of those diagnosed with ALS is attributed to family genes. But sadly, Madam Speaker, that's all we know for the cause of ALS. Doctors can determine the cause of ALS for only 5 to 10% of patients. The rest, we do not know, for now. Madam Speaker, research is the most significant lever that we have to give a chance for those who are diagnosed with ALS to survive. That is why I support the motion. Research is the only way to increase the likelihood of finding a cure and increasing survival rates. We know this is true. For example, cancer survival rates for all cancers went up from 53 to 60% in approximately 15 years. And that's not factoring all the progress that's been made over the past century. And that's all because of research. Furthermore, the leading experts and clinicians believe they have the tools required to effectively understand how ALS is caused because of the research done in the past 5 years. That is more research combined in the last 100 years. But more needs to be done. For example, Project Mind, which aims to profile 15,000 individuals with ALS and 7,500 control subjects worldwide, will provide targets to researchers. Essentially, it will allow researchers to adapt a ready, aim, fire strategy as opposed to a ready, fire strategy. If we don't know the cause, it's extremely hard to identify the cure or provide targeted medicine. Most ALS researchers believe the limitation to developing treatments is resources in the form of research investments. Of the 30-plus genes known to play a role in the development of ALS, very few have been examined in detail by more than one research facility in the world. Leading experts in ALS research know there are multiple genetic factors that contribute to people developing ALS, and it is often a combination of these factors that leads to the diagnosis. They also know that it is possible for the genetic mutations to show up in healthy individuals, but they never lead to developing ALS. It is for this reason that Project MIND will look into the genetic profiles of 15,000 ALS patients worldwide. This will allow to get a better understanding of the genetic difference and mutations that have a strong causal effect on individuals developing ALS, therefore increasing the chance of identifying the specific cause and eventually a cure. I want to applaud the ALS Society of Canada for taking part in this study. It is a global effort, and I am glad to see Canada will be participating. Our diversity in Canada will provide better sampling in this global initiative. The project in Canada is currently funded at 36%. All the funding comes from grassroots fundraising campaigns. I hope governments will come to the table to at least bring the total project cost to 50%. This would greatly accelerate Canada's participation. The project worldwide was officially launched in 2013. It is up to us to decide how quickly we will get this done in Canada. Madam Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to elaborate on this subject that members of Parliament have been lobbying on for quite some time now in regards to ALS, and that is the right to try legislation. I actually want to thank the Member of Parliament for Humber River Black Creek for not including this in her motion, as this would have caused me to rethink my support. I agree with the objectives in the proposed bill that we've seen. Essentially, we need to find a better way to get pharmaceutical research to market in order to ensure that patients can benefit from it. But, Madam Speaker, the no liability clause in the proposed bill, which would effectively remove all responsibility from the sponsor of the drug, is certainly not the proper way to move forward on this. The sponsor must continue to bear responsibility. There is a better path forward, and that path involves more dollars for research, and that is the reason why I support this motion. I know it can be easy for me to say, as I don't face a terminal illness. In fact, if I were in that position, I would try every avenue to find a cure. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that many terminal ill patients have been taken advantage of in the past. In many cases, it killed them before their time or caused them even more illness. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, some of the false hopes that are given to certain communities because of this so-called miracle treatment are despicable. We only have to think of the recent example with those diagnosed with MS and the CCSVI treatment. Having said this, Madam Speaker, I want to applaud the work Jeff Perot of Adaptive Canuck ALS Foundation has done and his determination to advocate for the rest of his life for what he believes is right. He is, in my mind, a great advocate for those who have been diagnosed with ALS. I do recognize that we need to find a better way to access innovative medicine wherever it may become available in the world. We just need to ensure the patient is always front and center in these decisions. Madam Speaker, we are close to finding a positive path for those who are diagnosed with ALS. For this to happen, we need to continue to advocate for more research investment dollars, raise awareness, and provide a leadership role in Canada. We need a coordinated approach in Canada that rewards horizontal information sharing. Once again, I want to thank my honourable colleague for bringing this important motion forward. This is our Ice Bucket Challenge, and I encourage and challenge all members of this House to support this motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Resuming debate, reprise de débat.